Hi kids, welcome to Kids on the Screen. This is a special program that we're doing this year. We usually do this down on the town green, but we have some special circumstances this year. So we're bringing this to you here on Facebook Live. We're so glad you guys are here. I want to start out by giving a big thanks to the Vienna Club of Rotary. They helped make this happen, and we're so glad that they were able to do that. We'll be here every Tuesday at 10 a.m. We have live animal shows, we have puppet shows, we have kids music. We hope you'll come see us every Tuesday. We also are doing some fun virtual story times on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. So parents, caretakers, if you guys can write that down, we'd love to see you Wednesdays at 1 p.m. for virtual story time. Today we have a great live animal show with wildlife ambassadors. You're going to meet all kinds of critters from all over the world. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to wildlife ambassadors and Becky Shore.
Good morning. We're so excited to be here with you this morning, and we have brought a wonderful animal show for you this morning. Before I get started and introduce you to four of our really amazing ambassadors, just tell you a little bit very quickly about where these ambassadors come from. So Wildlife Ambassadors is located on our farm out in Purcellville, and we travel around the area normally all over the metro area. But the second part of what we do is rescue. So the animals that you'll meet this morning or in any of our programs have come to us in a couple of ways. Typically from wildlife rehabilitators. They might be injured or orphaned animals. Sometimes we get animals that come to us because they've been displaced. They've lost their home, and so they're looking for a new place to land and spend their lives with us. And so that's another reason that we might have some of our ambassadors come in. So I'll try to give you their stories as we meet each one this morning. I do have two animals that are backyard neighbors, so we're going to focus on some animals that you would actually have right here in your very own backyards, while you might not typically see them. So this is kind of cool to get to meet them up close and in person. And then we have two that come from very far away as well. So we'll kind of bounce around a little bit this morning. And without further ado, we're going to meet our first one, who is our newest ambassador at Wildlife Ambassadors. Although it's been a crazy start to spring, our rescues don't slow down, so we still have animals that come in that need homes. So this one actually just came to us about 4 weeks ago, so she is really new. She is still considered a baby or a juvenile. She's not full grown. So let's go ahead and get her out so we can meet her and learn about her. We're excited to be able to show her to you also, because not only would it be hard for you to see these little guys normally, but you might not see them at this cute size. So here we have Pogo. And some of you, if you follow any of our pages, may have actually seen that we had a name contest for Pogo recently. And she was a lot smaller. She's grown a ton in 4 short weeks. But we received 295 different name suggestions for this little girl, and Pogo was the winning name. So we really liked that one. We had a team of our family judges that picked that one. So Pogo is a Virginia possum. And what's cool is that she shares our Commonwealth's name. It's not because possum are only found in Virginia, but it is because when settlers first arrived here, this animal they found here in Virginia, so they gave it the name Virginia possum. Possum are really amazing animals and one of my favorites. And here's the first reason why. Pogo's a marsupial. So maybe you've heard that word before and you're thinking, okay, I know what that means. And maybe you're even guessing, hey, a kangaroo, a wallaby, those guys are marsupials. Absolutely right. They are, because they're pouched mammals. And so Pogo has a pouch too. Kind of hard to show you because they don't like us to really poke at their belly there, but that's where her pouch is, because this is a female. And what that means is that Pogo would carry, as a baby, she would have been carried around in her mother's pouch. So this girl, like I said, she's a pretty good size now. We call this a juvenile. She's not really a baby anymore. She does still have a lot of growing to do though. She's gonna get to be the size of a pretty good sized house cat by the time she's done growing. We don't know what to do with those peels, so I'm gonna help you out. So when Pogo was born, picture this, this is kind of amazing. She was the size of a bumblebee. That's it. Teeny tiny. So they start out very, very small because she is a marsupial. So here's what that means. She's so different than something like a puppy or a kitten. She's not a small version of what she will be. she still has a lot of growing to do when she's born. So marsupials are very undeveloped, and that means they're this cute little tiny pink animal, and they don't have the fur, they don't have the limbs, the tail hasn't even grown yet. They climb up into mom's pouch, and that's where they're not only really safe, but that's where they do all that growing. Now here's a wild thing. This possum could have had anywhere from 11 to 12 other brothers and sisters, and they all are kept in that pouch safely with mom together as they grow. So why do we have Pogo? We actually have Pogo for an unfortunately very common reason. There's three big threats to possum other than their natural predators, and natural predators can be owls, raccoons, and foxes. But the other problems for these guys are actually created by us. And so one is dogs, one is cats, and one is cars. Pogo was the sole survivor of a dog attack. So unfortunately, her siblings and her mom were all killed by a dog. This little one was saved, but she was kept with a person for quite a long time in the beginning and got very, very friendly. Call that imprinted, and so when we have an animal like this that is typically wild and they act like this, we can't safely return them to the wild. Pogo would not be safe because she would constantly be trying to find humans in order to feed and care for her. So she was sent to us. We have special permits that allow us to keep any of the animals that you're going to see today so we can safely care for them for their lives. Plus, she has a super great job now. She's an ambassador, so we call her a wild teacher. A couple other awesome things about Pogo. Maybe you're noticing this tail, and you can see it's wrapped around my fingers here. As I'm holding Pogo, you might see it kind of wrap around my hand a little bit. That tail is one of my favorite tails in the animal kingdom. It has a really big name. It's called a prehensile tail, and there it is, kind of wrapped around my arm. So we know of animals like chameleons have these tails. Certain types of monkeys, like a spider monkey, has a prehensile tail, and our very own Virginia possum. So that tail has muscles in it that work like your hand does. So it helps her to grasp a tree branch when she's climbing, and she's a great climber. These guys are at home on the ground, but also up in the trees. And being up in the trees keeps them safe from things like the great horned owl. All right, here's why we like these guys. So aside from just being a really neat animal, and they're pretty cute, she's important. In your backyard, this animal is a huge benefit. Pogo eats bugs, but not just any bug. This girl here is responsible for eating thousands of ticks every single year. So we love possum. Possum are very, very helpful and very beneficial. They don't just go around eating ticks. What happens is her hair, you might be noticing, kind of stands up. It's a little wiry. So as they're busy at night, this is a nocturnal animal, they're going to be crawling through tall grasses where we have a lot of ticks. When that happens, those ticks stick to that fur. When Pogo is done walking around and eating during the nighttime, she's going to go back to her little den or her log or hollow log, and they take a bath. They're actually really clean animals. When they groom themselves, she's going to eat all those ticks that were sticking to her fur. So this makes her pretty beneficial. Other than ticks, they are good rodent control, and then this one is amazing. She is not the only animal that does this. We're going to meet two today that do this, but this is a predator of venomous snakes. We have two venomous snakes in our area, the copperhead and the timber rattlesnake. Possum can eat both. Why? Because they're immune to venom. So I always say she's like a little superhero. Her superpower is that venom cannot touch her. All right, we're gonna let little Pogo go back in. As I put her back in, I wanna tell you really quickly how she stays safe. You probably have heard this before, that a possum is great at playing dead. And they sure do. So what they're gonna do is lay over on their side, open their mouth, tongue hangs out, eyes closed. They will drool, and they actually make themselves smell bad. Any animal that gets close to that doesn't want to have anything to do with them, so they conveniently leave our possum alone. And while it may seem really funny and silly, great way for her to stay safe. Every animal I have here today has an awesome adaptation for staying safe. Some are funny, some are really interesting. This next one's really interesting. This next one takes us to South America. So today, gonna be very, very hot and humid again. That's perfect weather for this animal. That's where we would actually find her. All right, let me get her down here like this. So this big creepy crawly is Charlotte. And Charlotte is a Chilean rosehair tarantula. They do not live here, so if this is giving you the creepies, we don't have tarantulas in Virginia. As I said, this one's from South America. She's actually from Chile. But we do have tarantulas in the United States. You would just have to go out to the Southwest. So you would go out to Arizona, New Mexico, places like that. They like deserts or they like tropical rainforests, but they like the heat. So as I said, today with our humidity, definitely a great rainforest day, a day that we're gonna, that a spider like this would be quite comfortable. So a couple cool things about Charlotte. First thing I'm gonna share with you, when people see her walking on my hands or they hear the word tarantula or they see this girl, they get a little spooked. They don't get a good reputation. Tarantulas definitely don't have a huge fan club, but I like to try to change that. They're one of my favorite animals. They are an animal who's kind of unfairly thought of. And truly, kids, that really comes from the movies. A lot of the things we know about tarantulas are myths, and it's because we see them in movies being really creepy or being dangerous, climbing out of caves. Think of Harry Potter and the huge spiders. That's definitely attributed to the fear of these guys. But here's the important thing to know. She is not dangerous. She's not deadly. I would not be holding her on my hand like this if she could really hurt me. Matter of fact, it's very rare that she would even try to bite me. The reason for that is I'm not doing anything to harm Charlotte. So I'm not scaring Charlotte. She doesn't feel like she's in danger. She doesn't feel threatened. And her bite is really not how she defends herself. So I said every animal has a really cool way here with me today that they defend themselves, or a funny way like the possum. This one's really cool. If you see how hairy she is, those tarantula hairs do two really important things. One is they kind of take the place of ears. You're probably noticing spiders don't have ears. These hairs pick up vibration. So they lead her to her food, or they warn her of danger. Those hairs are also very itchy. They don't feel good. You're probably seeing she's sitting on my hand, but I'm not touching or petting her. I wouldn't do that. One, because she's fragile, but two, because those hairs itch, they burn, and they sting. So if you've ever had a splinter or slivers, or you've walked through nettles, that's actually a great example of what these feel like. They're like tiny thorns, and when they get stuck in something, they itch and then they burn. They don't feel good. So if a predator gets close to Charlotte, and let's say Miss Charlotte cannot actually get out of the way and go down into a tunnel or a burrow, which is what she would like to do, then she'll take her back legs here, brush the hairs off of that belly, we actually call it an abdomen, and throw those hairs. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but remember I said they itch, they burn, they sting. When she throws them, all those hairs have teeny tiny little barbs in them. You can't see, I can't see, but when they get right up into her face, or somebody's trying to get me from under the table here, or they get up into a predator's eyes, they're miserable, they're awful. She has the ability, when she kicks those hairs into a predator's eyes, to temporarily blind them. That's amazing. So people worry about their fangs. It's actually their hairs that are the thing that you need to worry about. But we're gonna talk about the fangs, because the fangs are fascinating and one of the best parts about tarantulas. Those fangs are tucked neatly underneath Charlotte right now. So we can't see them because they're underneath her body. But when she goes to attack her food, what's going to happen is Charlotte is going to lunge at her food and grab it. She's what we call an ambush predator. So when you're out and about this summer and you're noticing all those beautiful spider webs and you're looking at spiders in your backyard or your garden, which hopefully you'll see a lot of them, we have a lot of amazing species, and they're beautiful and they're very, very helpful. But most of them spin big, elaborate webs. They wait for their prey to actually fly or climb into that web, get stuck in it, then they come down and they bite their prey. She doesn't do that. So she doesn't spin a web to catch her prey in. Instead, she's fully involved. She waits. Those hairs pick up vibrations that lead her to a cricket or a beetle or a cockroach, and then she's going to lunge out, sink her fangs in, and bite that insect. Here's what happens, and this is very cool. When she bites, there are two things that are happening. She releases venom, and the venom is really important because it paralyzes the animal. Let's say Charlotte wants to go after something the size of a mouse or a small lizard. She sure can. She does that by using that venom. The venom paralyzes them so they can't move. Second thing that's released when Charlotte bites is an enzyme that actually turns her food, and wait for this, this is kind of gross, but it's really, really cool, turns her food into a liquid milkshake, if you will. So a cricket milkshake, cricket smoothie, that's how the venom works. That's why it's important, and that's why she has to have it. We get asked all the time if we remove it. No, most definitely not. I'm going to talk about this since she's doing this, which is so cool. Hopefully you guys can see that silk coming from these two spinnerets here in the back, and it's attached to my thumb. It's like cotton candy, so it's super sticky. You'll see me wrap it around my hand in a second to kind of get rid of it because it's really, really sticky. So she does spin silk. All spiders spin silk. It's just that she doesn't spin it to make a web. She's going to use this for a couple other reasons. One is she can spin that silk on the top of her burrow to kind of make a little like top, and it keeps her safe in her burrow from predators getting to her. But the one that I really like that she'll do with this silk, and you probably saw how long it was now it's kind of back on her here, she can use that silk as a drag line. So what that means, and here it is that when she's walking along the rainforest floor, she can attach that silk to her burrow, then walk along, see, it's like cotton candy, it's terrible stuff, and it will follow her the whole way. When she's done getting her food, whatever she's doing on that rainforest floor, she can turn around and follow that drag line back home. So it's really pretty nifty. Cool stuff. Now, I want to leave you with a super cool fact about spiders. A lot of times when people meet Charlotte, they say, oh, okay, so she's venomous, but not all spiders, of course, are venomous. No, they absolutely are. Every species of spider is venomous. What we're looking for is every species of spider is not dangerous. There are very few that pose a threat to you and I. Most of them are like Charlotte, and their venom's like a bee sting or even less than that. That's what her venom would be like. It's the potency of a bee sting. We do have some in the world, of course, that have venom that's more serious, and a bite obviously would not feel good and can make a bad wound. That's very rare. Most of our spiders, that's not the case at all. We have jumping spiders and argiops, garden spiders, we have lynx spiders, we have wolf spiders. They're all absolutely harmless, but they do have venom that's potent enough so they can get those bugs and make that milkshake like we talked about. Because guess what? All of our spider friends are missing one important thing, and that's teeth. They have no teeth. They can't chew. They've got to liquefy their food. All right, Miss Charlotte, we're going to put her back in. By the way, Charlotte is about 12 years old, which is pretty fascinating when you think about a spider being 12. She could live to be 30. So this is a pretty long-lived animal, and the reason is she's a female. Unfortunately, the males don't live that long, usually like about 5 years old. All right, guys, we're going to go to Australia next. This guy's really cool. He is one of two of our reptile ambassadors at Wildlife Ambassadors. And we're just going to wipe his little face because he was digging. All right. This is Milo. Milo is a type of skink from Australia. And I'm going to tell you the name, and hopefully he's going to show you here today. But he's called a blue-tongue skink. He is one of our oldest animals at Wildlife Ambassadors. He's about 24 years old. And for a lizard, that is definitely an older lizard. You can probably see he's still shedding. He's got some shed here coming out of those little ears. When lizards shed, and there's shed coming off there, it can take weeks for these guys. They don't shed in one nice piece like a snake does. So he kind of sloughs off pieces, and he's still losing some down here by his legs. So we're not going to find Milo here in our backyard, but we do have a species of skink. And I encourage you guys to get out this summer and look for those little guys. Ours are nowhere near the size of Milo. He is a big guy. Ours are about this big, and then their tail is also about that long. They're thin, and they're called five-lined skink. That's the one that most people see. They'll see them like on walking up a hot patio or near a pool. That's a common place to see them. They have blue stripes on their tail. We also have a broad head skink. They have a red head and like a coppery body, so almost same size, Really, really pretty lizards. This guy's huge because he doesn't come from here. He's Australian. Some of these guys live in New Guinea as well. And they get so big because unlike here, they're not worrying about 4 different seasons. So they don't have to hibernate for winter time. They're out all year long. So they're getting lots of really rich foods. They're in the heat, so they tend to be larger. And we find that with rainforest species like the spider that I shared with you. Definitely bigger because of habitat and because of opportunity, you know, constant food and resources. So some cool things about Mr. Milo here, and we're waiting for that tongue. Hopefully he's going to stick it out for you. His full name is a blue tongue skink, and the blue tongue actually keeps him safe. So it's kind of a crazy thing because most animals in the animal kingdom have a pink, red, or black tongue. Those are the most common colors of animal tongues in the animal kingdom, but we do have some that have different colors, and this guy's is blue. Usually as he gets a little busier in my hands, he'll start to kind of stick that tongue out, so we're gonna hope that he does it, but I am gonna talk about it. If he's threatened in the rainforest and a big animal comes near Milo and he's scared, here's how he's going to handle that. He's going to open his mouth really, really wide, gape it wide open, and that alone looks super threatening. But then imagine when he does this, this blue tongue unfurls, sticks out, and when an animal sees that, it's like a flag. That blue color allows animals to believe that he is poisonous. He is not poisonous or venomous, and the two are actually different, but he is bluffing, or we call it mimicking. So he's pretending to be something that he's not, and I think we're getting close to maybe seeing it. He was opening that mouth a little bit. It's a great adaptation that some animals use in nature because he doesn't have to use a lot of energy. He just sticks out this blue tongue, scares animals away, and they're gonna leave our cool guy alone and move on to something that hopefully wouldn't try to hurt them. But as you've probably guessed, there's a lot of animals that are going to get nowhere near that face because that jaw is really powerful. And if he bit them, his jaw is so strong that it could feel like if you or I slammed our fingers in a car door. So there's a lot of power to it. So a lot of animals might want to come up from behind for a sneak attack. If they do that, the longest part of his body, of course, that would be the natural thing to grab is his tail. He's got a very cool tail. This tail on this lizard works to save his life. It's a last-ditch effort, but if an animal grabs this tail, Milo can snap his tail off where he has been grabbed. Or let's say something happens, something falls on his tail, he can also snap his tail to get away. How does that work? So these tails on lizards like this that can detach them have a fractured plane. So basically all down his tail, it's like a fracture, it's weakened, and so the muscles pull apart and his tail can actually snap off. Doesn't hurt him, there is no blood, and the best part for Milo is that it will eventually grow back. So his tail, like 6 months to a year, because it is a tail, so it doesn't grow back right away, but it will eventually. Usually we know when a lizard's lost his tail because it's not the same thickness or even color. So this guy, I would bet on it, has his original tail. No reason for him not to. He's lived in captivity. He was actually a zookeeper's pet who was donated to us about 7 years ago. All right, Milo, we're gonna let you go back in. I don't know that he stuck his tongue out, so I am sorry about that. You're gonna have to take my word for it. It is blue. Usually if we're outside and it's hot like today, he's much more active and we see that tongue a lot more. He's being pretty chill. He is an old lizard, so that's part of that. And we're gonna end with a grand finale. And I do say grand finale because this is one of my favorites. All of our animals are certainly my favorites. This guy was new to us last year. He was a baby that was brought to us last year. He was found by himself, no mom, no siblings, much like Pogo, and was rescued by somebody well-meaning, but they did, again, keep him. It is not legal to keep wildlife and certainly not wild babies. What happens is if they don't get to the right people, these guys get too used to humans and again, they get imprinted. He can't be released to the wild for that reason. And there we have Mr. Cotton. So yes, Cotton is a skunk. When people see this, first question is always, why isn't Cotton spraying you? And you can see his little tail's up, but he is descented. So once it was decided by a veterinarian that this guy was way too friendly to be able to safely be released to the wild, they do descent them. So he doesn't have scent glands, he can't spray, so I can safely work with Cotton on a day-to-day basis. Cotton's about a year old. He just turned a year actually this June. So he is a June baby. We're gonna give him a piece of banana, keep him busy. He loves bananas. I don't have many animals at Wildlife Ambassadors that don't love bananas. They all tend to really like them. Cool things about skunks. So let's talk about the spray first. That's what everybody wants to know. And by the way, Cotton is a striped skunk. We have 2 species of skunks in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And a lot of people don't know that because we don't ever see the other one. It's much more elusive and it's located in the mountains. That is the spotted skunk. So think just like this guy, black and white, but white spots on a black body. Very, very pretty. We just don't see them as much as we see our friend, the striped skunk here. So here's how it works. That spray is an amazing adaptation to keep this fella safe. There's no doubt that animals do not want to mess with a skunk. We've heard lots of skunk jokes, but how does it really work? They don't just go around spraying animals. They have to feel threatened. So first thing they're going to hope for is while they're out and about at night, and again, this is an animal who's primarily nocturnal, so you're typically not going to see this guy during the day. First thing he's going to do is hope that any animal that sees him, this black on white, is a flag. That coloration in itself is actually a warning that says, do not get closer to me. You don't want to do that. So he hopes that this is the first thing that works for him. If it doesn't work, let's say we've got a bold fox, and foxes are very bold, and when they're hungry this time of year and they're trying to feed pups, they might be a little bit more of a risk taker. Let's say this fox keeps coming at the skunk because he's going to try to go for it. Next thing the skunk's going to do is he's going to stomp his front feet and run at the fox like this, just a little bit, to make himself look assertive, to make himself look aggressive. He's not, and that's the best part. Skunks are very, very chill, but he wants that animal to be scared. He doesn't want to have to spray. If it comes to it though, he's definitely going to. So let's say our fox does not listen. He's going to turn around, lift his tail, much like it's lifted right now, and he's going to shoot that spray. They have 2 glands, whoop, there we go, at the base of the tail that squirt out that spray. They are very, very accurate, and they could hit something 10 to 15 feet away. That's pretty amazing. There are several chemicals in the skunk spray, and I won't bore you with a chemistry lesson, but I will tell you one you're probably pretty familiar with. Most people have heard of sulfur. Sulfur does not smell good. If you've ever smelled it, it smells like rotten eggs. That's one of the things that is in our cute little skunk's spray. So definitely one of the reasons it doesn't smell good. Have you ever heard that if you or a dog is sprayed by a skunk, you should take a bath in tomato juice? Everybody's heard that. So I will tell you that is not true. If you or your dog were to do that, you're now going to smell like skunk spray and you're going to smell like a tomato. So kind of a rotten tomato, not a really good combination. What you actually can use, because there's chemicals in his spray, is a combination of baking soda, hydrogen peroxide, and oftentimes, excuse me, a little bit of Dawn dish soap. Dawn dish soap has tons and tons of uses, and these things can actually break up the chemicals that make that spray. So let's find out what's so great about a skunk though. They're not just about spraying. That's just what most people know about our friend here. So Cotton is another really important backyard neighbor that you guys have. No, you're not normally going to see him or his family because they do like to be out at night, but not always. So I want to really quickly mention that because it's an important thing to know about our native wildlife. You could see a skunk or a raccoon out at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Does not mean that something is necessarily wrong with that animal. Sometimes they're out because this is baby season. They're trying to feed those babies when it's hot. They're looking to take care of them and find food before it gets, whoops, super, super hot. Sometimes they're moving babies. So there's a couple different reasons for that. But in your backyard at night, this guy is mainly a grub eater. So he's going to use those long nails. He's going to dig into a rotted log. He's going to dig into the ground to get things like termites. He eats ground bees. He eats hornets and wasps. We like skunks. They are very, very good. And this is your second animal, folks, in your backyard who's a predator of venomous snakes. He helps keep balance so those guys don't get out of control. So I'm going to end there with our little skunk. We're going to let him go back in, but I want to thank you guys for tuning in this morning. If you want to find out anything more about our animals or our programs, be sure to visit us on our page, wildlifeambassadors.org. You got to go back in, my friend. We are crate trained, which is pretty impressive.
Much kids for joining us today for our first Kids on the Green. We will be here every Tuesday at 10 a.m. on Facebook Live. Next week we have Marcia and the Positrons, so she's going to do some kids rock and roll, and everyone will get to learn lots about science and space and all kinds of cool things. We hope you'll join us for that. Come back and see us at 1 p.m. tomorrow for Sprinklers, Stories, and Songs on Facebook Live. And one more big thank you to the Rotary Club of Vienna. We'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.